25,000 steps, up and back down again. Somebody paid $260 million for a staircase in a neighborhood that cost $25 billion. And the staircase is the only part anyone actually talks about. There's a reason this all got built so fast, and it starts with a program meant for the poorest parts of this city, nowhere near here. Cheaper loans, faster visas, all in exchange for building where the need is real. Somebody looked at Manhattan's richest new development and figured out how to get it onto that list anyway. Not by changing the project, by changing the map. Planners drew a corridor stretching more than 100 blocks north through housing projects in Harlem that had nothing to do with the district, until the paperwork technically qualified Hudson Yards as economically distressed. On the strength of that map, over $1 billion in foreign capital flowed toward the towers. Money a program built for Harlem never got anywhere near. Every step of it was legal. That's almost the more disturbing part. Nobody broke a law drawing that line north through public housing. They just found the one shape of the map that let a luxury tower borrow the zip code of people who will never set foot inside it. Somewhere in a Harlem apartment, someone is paying market rent in a building that helped finance a mall they'll never shop in, using a program with their neighborhood's name on it and none of its money. Picture the actual paper trail for a second. A caseworker in a city planning office tracing a border on a map. It starts at a luxury tower. It ends 100 blocks north in a public housing complex. Two neighborhoods, sharing nothing but a subway line. That line exists for one purpose: to let a spreadsheet classify the richest new zip code in Manhattan as distressed enough to qualify for a program built for the opposite kind of neighborhood. If you've ever wondered how a project this expensive gets built this fast in a city famous for red tape, that's the answer. Not corruption in the criminal sense, just paperwork, drawn cleverly enough that the poorest zip codes in Manhattan end up subsidizing the richest one. Wild. That's the version of this district nobody puts in the promotional video. The polished version starts somewhere else. March 2019, opening night, Liza Minnelli on stage. A $260 million staircase for one. 16 stories, 1,500 steps if you go all the way up, which currently you can't. The top has been sealed off permanently since it reopened, wrapped in steel mesh after sitting closed for 3 straight years. $25 billion spent, and the thing people actually remember is a monument nobody can finish climbing. And that wasn't even the strangest deal in this district. Then there's the retail anchor that lasted less time than most gym memberships. Neiman Marcus signed a lease built to run 50 years. It closed its doors after 16 months, bankrupt before the ink had time to age. On paper, a half-century promise. In reality, gone before most tenants finished their first renewal notice. Barely a footnote on the original contract. Wells Fargo bought the empty space for $550 million and turned the department store into office floors. A shopping mall's flagship tenant became a bank's back office 3 years after a pop star sang it open. Somewhere, a marketing consultant is still billing for that launch party. None of this happened by accident. None of it happened without help. Roughly $6 billion in tax breaks and subsidies went into this district. A 30-year discount on property taxes for some of the most expensive buildings in the country, locked in until 2044. Not great. Sit with that number for a second before the next one, because they don't belong in the same sentence. Out of that entire deal, the affordable housing total came to 107 units. Not a typo. 107. In a development built to house thousands, funded by a subsidy package large enough to run a small city's school system for a decade. Somebody, somewhere, called that a win. Picture what $6 billion actually buys anywhere else in this city, and then look at what it bought here. A discount on luxury towers already selling for 8 figures. A staircase nobody can finish climbing. A mall whose anchor tenant didn't survive its first Christmas. If you're the kind of person who still thinks tax breaks are handed out because a project needs the help to happen, this is the number that should change your mind. So who's actually living behind all that glass? Barely anyone, honestly. And whoever does is paying north of $4,000 a month just for a single bedroom to start. At 15 Hudson Yards, the concierge doesn't just take packages, they'll restock your refrigerator while you're away, because a meaningful share of these units aren't lived in full-time at all. Congratulations, technically, to whoever's fridge that is. It's being taken care of better than most tenants take care of their own. They're parked capital with a skyline view. That explains something people notice walking through at 7 p.m. on a weekday. The buildings are full, and the sidewalks are empty. No barber who's cut the same 3 generations of one family. No bodega guy who already knows your order before you say it. Walk 2 blocks west into Hell's Kitchen on the same evening, and the sidewalks are loud, uneven, alive. Not because the buildings are nicer, because the people living behind those windows are actually home. A neighborhood needs those things running for decades before they start to feel like anything, and money can buy the glass a lot faster than it can buy the decades. This isn't even the first time America has tried to build a city before it had people. Back in the 1950s, a developer platted 82,000 acres of California desert into a city meant to rival Los Angeles. Streets, grids, water lines, all in place before a single resident showed up. 70 years later, California City is still the 3rd largest city in the state by land area, and barely 15,000 people live there. Infrastructure alone never built the metropolis it was supposed to. Hudson Yards isn't California City, and it never will be. But it's running the same experiment, just with better funded tenants covering the gap. Give it time. Hudson Yards escaped the ghost city fate for one reason. It isn't trying to be a self-contained city. It's an office park with better landscaping, sitting inside one of the densest job markets on the planet. An asset manager the size of BlackRock, a tech giant like Meta, a professional services firm, Deloitte, that just claimed 800,000 square feet for itself. The tenant roster reads like a who's who of corporate America. 90% of the office space is leased. 93% of the retail is occupied. By every number a developer tracks, this project works. Which is a very polite way of saying nobody asked how it feels to actually live there. And still, ask someone who actually lives in this city what the place feels like, and the word that comes up isn't impressive. It's cold, sterile. A district built for balance sheets, not for people who need somewhere to be on a Tuesday afternoon with nothing scheduled. The High Line was rusting steel nobody wanted, a few blocks away. It eventually became one of the most walked stretches of pavement in the 5 boroughs. Proof that this city can grow something real out of nothing. But that took decades nobody planned for, in a place nobody was trying to sell shares in at the time. Nobody stood on the old rail line in 1990 pitching investors on foot traffic. It just happened. Slowly. The way real neighborhoods always do, which is exactly the one part of the process this district couldn't buy its way into. $25 billion bought platforms over live railroad tracks, a staircase to nowhere, and an office district with real staying power. It also bought a paper trail running straight through a Harlem zip code that never got a vote on any of it. What it didn't buy is the one thing this city has never sold at any price: the years it takes for a place to stop being a product and start being somewhere people actually belong.